Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to this full race review for the 2018 United States Grand Prix from Austin, Texas. Hopefully you guys are doing well after yesterday's highly emotional and just great race. After watching the race back, it just gets better every time I see any overtake or just the race in full. What a race it was yesterday, and the next an hour and 15 minutes, we're going to fully go through the race and what happened for all the teams, all the stories, all the quotes, all the stats here right now. But if by some miracle, guys, you missed what happened yesterday and you did not see the results from yesterday's US Grand Prix, let me take you through them now. So here you go. Kimi Raikkonen, for the first time since Australia in 2013, wins a Formula 1 race from Max Verstappen second, Lewis Hamilton third, Sebastian Vettel fourth, Bottas 5th, Hülkenberg 6th, Sainz in 7th, Perez 8th, Hartley 9th and Ericsson in 10th. The reason Perez finishes 8th and Hartley 9th and Ericsson 10th is because Ocon and Magnussen, who originally finished in 8th and 9th, were disqualified from the Grand Prix, which we'll get onto later. And then the rest of the field: Stoffel Van Dorn in P11, Gasly in P12, Sirot in 13th, Stroll 14th. Your retirements are Charles Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo, Romain Grosjean and Fernando Alonso. And then again, being disqualified from the race, Esteban Ocon and Kevin Magnussen. So those are your results from the US Grand Prix. And now, let's just get straight into this review. And first off, we go to Mercedes, who, going into the Grand Prix, it looked as though Lewis was going to win the championship, with Vettel starting 5th and Hamilton starting on pole on the better tyres compared to Kimi Raikkonen alongside him on the front row. Lewis was looking good for maybe a race win, but definitely going for the championship win here at COTA. But it didn't go to plan for Mercedes. First off the start line, Kimi Raikkonen beat Hamilton into turn 1. Hamilton then did close up a bit during the first stint up until the virtual safety car came out, when Lewis Hamilton then pitted as Kimi Raikkonen stayed out. I still believe that was a Ferrari mistake, by the way. Hamilton pitted, lost less time in the pit stops again because of virtual safety car. When you pit, you lose less time because the cars out on the track are travelling at lower speed. And because of Kimi Raikkonen staying out and Lewis going onto the soft compound tyres, he immediately caught up to Kimi, tried to pass Kimi, but Kimi brilliantly held him off. Then Raikkonen pitted and Hamilton stayed in the lead, and it looked as though Hamilton was going for a one stop and was going to dominantly win this race and win the championship. But then his rear tyres massively grained up. The tyres were so gone towards the end of his second stint. If he had not pitted, I don't think Lewis would have finished on the podium at all, because Sebastian Vettel, for example, was catching him by 2 seconds a lap by the time Lewis came in for his second pit stop. They had to pit Lewis, I'm afraid, and when he came out, then he went hunting after what he needed to go and win the championship. Was let through by Valtteri Bottas for P3, and then caught Max Verstappen and Kimi Raikkonen, who were very close for the race win. But Lewis just ran out of time to pass Max Verstappen. He was so close to getting second place with about 3 or 4 laps to go, in a great battle with Max Verstappen, but just could not get the move done and finished in 3rd place. And even though he really probably should have won the race if the Mercedes didn't destroy its tyres so much, that's still a good result for me, because, you know, I think Mercedes maybe were expecting their tyres to grain up that much. So for them to still be so fast and not be that far off the race win and take an extra pit stop, it just shows how fast the Mercedes car still is. I don't think it was the fastest car in the US Grand Prix, but it's definitely right there with Ferrari. But let's hear from Lewis Hamilton about his US Grand Prix. This is what he had to say. It was actually a really fun race to be close with Kimi and have a bit of a battle with him and Max. that battle was absolutely fantastic as far as I'm concerned. It was quite cool that it was Ferrari, Red Bull and us battling for positions, and it must have been exciting to watch. Absolutely it was, Lewis. It was so tense, those last few laps. So tense. I've never been that tense. Maybe since like Brazil 2012 or something like that. For, you know, the end of a Grand Prix. What an intense finish and what a great finish to yesterday's race. And for Lewis, well, going forward, it's pretty simple. This is what he did in the race. Finished in third, but did set the fastest lap, of course, doing an extra pit stop. So he had fresher tyres and now holds the lap record at the Circuit of Americas. He did 2 pit stops. If he did 1 pit stop and his tyre wear wasn't so bad, he probably would have hung on for victory. But in Mexico, all he has to do is finish 7th or higher and he will win his 5th World Championship in Mexico, no matter what Sebastian Vettel does. So the championship most likely will end in Mexico. But for Valtteri Bottas, I'm afraid it just wasn't good enough. His start to the race wasn't too bad. He maintained third at the end of the first lap and stayed out of the chaos between Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo, which was good. But he just didn't have the pace at all in the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, who started 18th and started on the harder soft compound tyre compared to Bottas's super soft, caught Bottas quite quickly and was right on the back of him at the end of the first stint. And then Max undercut past Bottas for third place at the time. And Bottas from then on in just had no pace at all. And then was caught by Sebastian Vettel for the end. Vettel did not get past immediately, but when he finally went for the move, I think with about 2 laps to go, it was quite easy for Sebastian Vettel. Valtteri tried to defend down the inside, but had no grip. I think he also had very, very bad tyre wear, but they decided to keep him out instead of pitting him too, which probably would have been smarter to pit Valtteri as well as Lewis. But very similar for Valtteri Bottas compared to what he did at the last year's US Grand Prix. In qualifying, not too bad, but in the race, just nowhere near good enough, I'm afraid. And for Mexico, I think he'll be better, but he does need to step up a bit because, yeah, yesterday was not good by Valtteri Bottas. But for Mercedes, yes, they didn't get a race win, but all that matters to them is the championships. And even though I think Ferrari outscored them in the Constructors, Lewis Hamilton outscored Sebastian Vettel and is now virtually guaranteed to win the title in Mexico. Now, let's go on to Ferrari. What a day for the Iceman and the Kimster, Kimi Raikkonen, his first win in 5.5 years. And it wasn't an easy race. It was a race that he really had to fight for that victory. First off, beating Hamilton to turn 1. But then, 10 laps in, when the virtual safety car came out, Kimi Raikkonen and Ferrari, to be honest, decided to stay out instead of pitting under the virtual safety car as Lewis Hamilton came in and gained, I think, quite a lot of time at the time on Kimi. I still think that was a mistake. Yes, in hindsight, it did play out into Ferrari's favour, but only just. And I don't think Ferrari actually thought Mercedes would destroy their rear tyres. I don't think they thought that. So I think Ferrari got a bit lucky on that strategy, to be honest. But it played out. He held off Max Verstappen very well at the end of the race. Max was getting very close towards the last few laps, only a second behind. But Kimi, as ever, that's why he's called the Iceman. He kept his cool and took the checkered flag for his first win in 5 years. And I think this has to be the most emotional win in quite a long time. This victory does remind me of Jean Alesi's. I think someone else said that yesterday. Of Jean Alesi's win in Canada in 1995. It also reminds me of Gerhard Berger in 1997 at Hockenheim, Mika Hakkinen at Indy in 2001. Yeah, it's just a very emotional day yesterday because, let's be honest, most likely this is the final time you'll see Kimi Raikkonen win a race, because even though Brazil and Abu Dhabi historically have been better for him than the Circuit of Americas, look what had to go for him to win that race. He had to get a bit lucky to win that Grand Prix. He was fantastic though, not taking anything away from him. I think Ferrari were more lucky than Kimi Raikkonen. I think Kimi was really kind of unlucky that Ferrari didn't pit him under the virtual safety car, to be honest. But yeah, that's just, I guess, the way it went. And Kimi took his first win in 5 years. Let's hear from Kimi Raikkonen. And this is what he had to say. Obviously, it's a great feeling to win this race. It's nice to prove to all the people that we can still win. That's the reason we are here for, trying to win races and championships. It was an exciting race, not only for us, but also for all those who were watching. We had a very solid weekend, and then it continues to this. I felt confident, and I'm glad about that, especially because lately we've had rough weekends for the team. And he is right, Ferrari have had a rough period. They really have. Singapore, Sochi and Suzuka just got worse and worse and worse. And even though they did do some bottling again, driver and team, this weekend, at least they got the race win with Kimi Raikkonen. So I guess nothing else really matters, because I think they know that Vettel is not going to catch Lewis Hamilton in the championship. Now, when it comes to Kimi, this is his stats post the USA victory. This is his 21st race win. Again, his first F1 win since 2013. But also his first win at Ferrari since 2009. That was the 2009 Belgian Grand Prix, where he just about beat the Force India of Giancarlo Fisichella. He only beat him that day, basically because the Ferrari had the curse system and the Force India did not. So, yeah, 9 years ago. 9 years ago was the last time he won for the Scuderia. That is so long ago. It feels like thousands of years ago, honestly, in the world of Formula 1. But there you go, Kimi winning again. And yeah, very, very good to see. Hopefully has now a positive end to his Ferrari career, going into him going back to Sauber in 2019. But for Sebastian Vettel, again, he bottled it off the start line. He didn't do too bad. He maintained 5th place just about from the Renaults. And then on the back straight on the first lap, he passed Daniel Ricciardo, but down into turn 12 at the braking zone at the end of that back straight. Went wide. Ricciardo then went round the outside for turn 13. Vettel hit Ricciardo and then spun. And again, very similar to the Italian Grand Prix, where he hit Hamilton, and Suzuka, where he hit Max. It is Vettel's fault. I don't think he should get a penalty for this, for what he did to Daniel Ricciardo, but it's definitely his fault. And I think Toto Wolff came out and said, and I kind of agree, maybe not to this extent, but I do kind of agree, that if Vettel had not hit Ricciardo and had passed Ricciardo on the first lap, Vettel could have won this race. He could have won the Grand Prix. But, you know, after he crashed, he dropped back down to 14th and wasted probably half a pit stop at least getting past those slower cars. So, yeah, not good for Vettel. Not good at all. He did pass Bottas at the end of the race, so at least he did force the championship to go to Mexico. But he should have beat Hamilton. He really should have. If he didn't make that mistake, he would have been on the podium, in my opinion, because he wasted so much time with that spin and climbing back through the field. But for Ferrari, at least, again, they are back to winning races. Their first win since Spa. I think this is their 6th win of 2018. So good for them on winning for the first time in a few races. Now, let's go on to Red Bull Racing. Now, Red Bull with Max Verstappen, I have to say, was the driver of the day. What a performance again. Very similar to Sochi, except this was slightly better in my opinion. went from 18th to 2nd. What a result that is. Made a great start with the chaos that happened at the start. He did massively gain from that with, Grosjean and Leclerc and Vettel, having their incidents. He then got into the top 10, passed the Renaults and the Force Indias, and then got up to the back of Valtteri Bottas. Then did a very smart and nicely done undercut on Valtteri Bottas to put on the super soft tyres. And then he gave it everything for the last stint and caught up to the back of Kimi Raikkonen. And after Lewis Hamilton pitted, Max was promoted to 2nd. And Max was only, at the end of the race, 1.2 seconds off of winning the race. That is just, again, an amazing performance. To go from basically the back to almost winning. He did this last year, except not to the, same extent. Last year at the US Grand Prix, he started last and he, on track, finished 3rd, but of course had that penalty for illegally passing Kimi Raikkonen. So he's not a stranger to doing this. I kind of feel that this is a strong suit for Max when he starts from the back. He's very similar to Lewis Hamilton in this way, where if he starts from the back, he has enough aggression and speed that he can just fly through the field and still be right there at the end of the Grand Prix with the people that he, was going to compete with. And I will say as well, if Max had qualified where he normally would have in 5th, but started 4th because of Vettel's penalty, I think Max would have won this race. I think he would have, because even though, yes, the soft tyres were working very well for him in the first stint, I think that's what did help him. The Red Bull on the softer compounds was definitely performing better than the Mercedes and the Ferrari. So I think Max probably would have won the race if he started in his normal grid position. And this is what Max had to say after what was another stellar performance from the Flying Dutchman. Today went a lot better than expected. We had a great race pace and the right strategy for today. The team have certainly earned a little celebration tonight before we head to Mexico. Absolutely they have. A great result for Red Bull, and they continue to underline and show why they do have probably the best race pace in the entire field, in my opinion. But for the other Red Bull driver, I'm afraid it was a sorry but usual sight for Daniel Ricciardo. Another reliability problem. His engine didn't even last 10 laps, completely shut down just like it did in Bahrain, coming onto the back straight at the start of the back straight. And yeah, that's such cruel luck for Ricciardo. And I think you guys may disagree, but I think Ricciardo is the unluckiest driver in F1, and I think he's been the unluckiest driver for at least a couple years, maybe more. He continues to have issue after issue after issue. I can't remember a weekend where he's not had a reliability problem. He always has some kind of problem. When will this guy get some luck? I just want to see him, have a clean weekend. I think if he finished the race, he would have been right there for the win as well. Because remember, he was in 4th, as Verstappen was still passing the slower cars. He was in 4th place on the super soft tyres, so he was looking good for maybe a podium, which I was predicting for the race in the race watch along. By the way, if you've not checked out the race watch along, it's in the description down below. Yeah, I thought he could get a podium, but again, Renault have failed him, and well, his record reliability wise just continues to get worse. But for the team going forward for Mexico, I think they are going to be victorious in Mexico. I'm going to say it now. I think Max Verstappen will win the Mexican Grand Prix, because if he is this close to winning a race at this track with these, or this altitude and these conditions after starting 18th, imagine what he's going to do in Mexico, where the altitude means that the differences with the power units is a lot less, that is going to play to Red Bull's strengths. imagine what Max can do then. If Max qualifies in the top 3, he gives himself a massively great chance to win the race. So watch out for Max Verstappen in Mexico. I think he is going to add to his race winning tally. But this is now after the US Grand Prix, the Drivers' Championship. So Lewis Hamilton now leads by 70 points again. If he finishes 7th or higher in Mexico, he will win the championship regardless of what Sebastian Vettel does. Kimi Raikkonen climbs up to 3rd with that race win ahead of Valtteri Bottas. And then Bottas drops back down to 4th. But I've just noticed Max Verstappen is closing Bottas down. He's only 26 points behind. So if Verstappen does win in Mexico and Bottas has another poor race, Verstappen might get 4th in the Drivers' Championship at the end of 2018. It is possible for sure, but there you go. That is the Drivers' Championship. But before I move on to the midfield, guys, I'm going to see what you guys think of the top teams and how they all did at the US Grand Prix. So I'll read out some of your comments in the next 5 to 10 minutes, see what you guys think. Right, I'll just read through and include all your comments, or as many as I can. Someone's saying that Kimo seems like Bottas is destined for a fate similar to that suffered by Heikki Kovalainen. Finns don't fare well racing alongside Hamilton. Bottas does remind me a lot of Heikki Kovalainen and that relationship that Hamilton had with Heikki. The reason Heikki got kicked out was because, I think for a similar reason to why Bottas eventually is going to be kicked out of Mercedes, let's be honest. He's just not quick enough, or not as quick as Lewis Hamilton. But Bottas has definitely earned his seat at Mercedes for 2019. And by the way, yes, this win does put him past Mika Hakkinen. Sebastian Vettel, that's a nibbler in the chat. McClaw Lawson, can't wait to see Kimi and Sauber. I can't either. I think he's going to be a bit better than people expect. Someone saying there, who or what do you think about the Constructors' Championship? I'll get onto that at the end of this review. Don't worry, I will get onto that. Simon Cragland, do you think Ocon is better than Bottas? I think so. I think Bottas and Perez are pretty similar in terms of skills. I think Ocon is probably better, but I don't think it's a massive difference. I still think Ocon would get thoroughly beaten by Hamilton, especially this year. I don't think Ocon would beat Lewis Hamilton in the same car. I don't see it. Right, just looking for a few more comments. If Ocon gets the Williams seat and he is continuing to perform well and Bottas doesn't improve, then I think Ocon should get the Mercedes seat, even though Bottas is a decent second driver. For me, it depends on what Bottas does. If Bottas improves again for 2019, sorry, because he did improve, let's be honest, from 2017 to 2018. He is better this year than he was last year. If he improves again and wins, say, 3 or 4 races, I think that's enough for Bottas to be at Mercedes for 2019. Right, let me just read out a few more and then I'll move on to the midfield. Formula 1 spy. I mean, Bottas is free to race first part of the season, but he doesn't have pace of Lewis and he drops in points. Let me just read the end of that as it just went away. After it's normal that he must help Lewis if needed. The reason Bottas has to help Lewis so much now is because of Bottas's bad luck, and he's another driver that's had bad luck this season. China, he should have won the race. Baku, he should have won the race. Russia, he should have won the race. Austria, he could have won the race. You know, he could have 4 race wins by now, and I think people would be looking at Bottas a lot differently if Valtteri had 4 race wins. I don't think people would be saying, oh, Bottas needs to be kicked out. I think people would be saying that maybe Ocon doesn't have that great of a chance of a Mercedes seat for 2020. Niblo, 10 retirements in the last 22 races for Ricciardo is absolutely ridiculous. It is. Simon Craglan asks, how do you think Red Bull will perform next year? I think Red Bull at the start of 2019 will be about the same as they are now, but then by the end of 2019, I think they're going to be a bit closer to Mercedes and Ferrari, and I think they will pick up at least 3 race wins in 2019 with Honda, but that's only if Honda continue to improve like they have in 2018. If they continue to improve in 2019, then say for the first few races, Red Bull will be 3rd, 4th, 5th in terms of race results, but by the end of 2019, more like 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Again, only if Honda make the improvements that they need to. Right, I'll read out a couple more and then I'll move on to the midfield. Will Red Bull have a party mode next year? I think Red Bull do have a party mode with the Renault power unit now, but Honda do have a more powerful quote-unquote party mode on their power unit than Renault do. So yeah, they will be quicker in qualifying for sure next season. So for Monaco, for example, they could really dominate that race. Honda is 6/10 quick on the straight according to Horner. That's from Simon Cragland. Maybe it is. It probably is. Brendan Hartley yesterday was fantastic, and we'll get onto that when we get to Toro Rosso, but with what Hartley did in yesterday's race, I think that just underlines how Honda are making so much improvements right now. The issue yesterday was Hamilton just was pushing a lot to catch Kimi back up and destroyed his tyres. That's from Niblo. In hindsight, I think Mercedes would have kept Lewis out. But of course, you don't know what's going to happen when you make these certain decisions in the moment. Daniel Gelt was 0.6 of a second over a lap, I think. Okay, right, I'll read out one more and then I'll move on to the midfield. Gina says, Russian team orders destroyed Bottas. I don't think it did, because look at Suzuka. He finished in 2nd. He was good all weekend, held off Max Verstappen, even though Verstappen was a lot faster. I thought he did well there, even though the Mercedes was clearly the best. I don't think it destroyed him. It definitely didn't help and probably has lowered his mood and confidence, but it hasn't completely destroyed him. For sure, because I think Valtteri knew at the time that there was a strong possibility that he'd have to move out the way for Lewis, because Lewis has to win his World Championship. So yeah, I think for Bottas, hopefully he doesn't get too disheartened over this whole wingman thing, because I think when Toto Wolff said it, it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, and also because of Bottas' issues, he's had to play that role. So as long as Bottas gets better luck next year, maybe he can go for the title. We'll see. But now, guys, we will move on to the midfield. First off, McLaren. Now for Fernando Alonso, his race ended so soon at turn 4 as Lance Stroll piled into him and eliminated Fernando from the race. Nothing Fernando could do. He was minding his own business, and Lance, as we'll get on to with Williams, was clearly at fault for that incident. So unfortunate for him. Stoffel Van Dorn finished in 11th because of Ocon and Magnussen's penalties. Disqualification, sorry. So I guess a decent result, but let's be honest, he only gained that position from the massive amount of crashes on the first lap. So I think Van Dorn was a bit lucky, but at least he did get a good result for himself. But for McLaren, again, poor. And now Force India, even though Ocon was disqualified, Force India are now 4 points closer to McLaren. I think it's about 11 points now between McLaren and Force India. So I don't think McLaren are going to hold on to 6th in the Constructors. Now, going on to Renault, who were clearly the best of the rest in the race. What a result, 6th and 7th. Both drivers made a great start. For Carlos Sainz, a bit too good because he went wide and I think gained quite a big advantage from going wide at the exit of turn 1 and got a 5-second time penalty for it. I think Carlos did say as well that he didn't understand the penalty, but if you watch the replay, Carlos was not pushed off the track. He just decided to go off the track and then gained a position on the Force India of Esteban Ocon, so clearly did deserve that penalty. Renault's race was quite uneventful, to be honest. They were just very quick, solidly ahead of Force India and Haas, and got the result they deserved. A P6 and a P7. And that, of course, in their battle with Haas, is very, very important. This is what happened in the battle between Renault and Haas. So Hülkenberg 6th, Sainz in 7th, but for Haas, Grosjean retired on the second lap because of contact with Charles Leclerc, and Magnussen, despite finishing in 9th, was disqualified. So, as we'll get onto later when we get to the constructors' standings, Renault, I think, basically have confirmed that they're going to finish in 4th. Now, in terms of pace this season, I think Renault have been a bit disappointing, but when it comes to results, and at the end of the day, F1, and I guess sport is a results business, they have got the result they were aiming for in the constructors in 4th, and I think that'd be a great result for them at the end of 2018, because in 2016 they finished in 9th, last year it was 6th, and then for this year it looks as though it's going to be 4th. So even though Renault, again, don't have the fastest car in the midfield and haven't really had the fastest car in the midfield all season, I think they have earned 4th in the constructors. Of course, it's not confirmed yet. Haas can still pull it back, but realistically, with the way things are going, I don't see how Haas can catch Renault in the Constructors' Championship. So good there for Renault, and hopefully in Mexico, again with the engine deficits being lessened because of the just where the track is and where it's placed in the world, hopefully for Renault, for Renault's sake, they confirm their 4th in Mexico. Next up is Force India, who, for Esteban Ocon, it was a very unfortunate end. He did earn I thought, a quite solid and good 8th place finish. He probably could have been a bit faster, and he wasn't too far off the Renaults, but Renault just had the better race pace, I guess. Force India not doing as well as I think they thought they would. But Ocon, after the race finished, was disqualified for exceeding the 100 kilogram fuel flow level limit on the first lap. Now, you can argue against that, and I would like to see those rules changed, but at the end of the day, rules are rules. If you break them, you should get punished. So I'm afraid they deserve the penalty, and Esteban Ocon deserves the penalty because, again, they broke the rules, so got what, in my opinion, they deserved. And this is what Esteban Ocon had to say about it on Twitter. Pushing the whole race, getting good points, and getting disqualified in the end for a stupid reason is probably the worst feeling ever. Our mistake. Anyway, not giving up for sure. Yeah, I can understand why he'd feel that way, because it is a bit of a stupid reason, but those are the rules, and that's just the way it is. So, yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. They just need to be careful next time on the first lap when it comes to the fuel flow limits. And hopefully for the Mexican Grand Prix, which is Sergio Perez's home race, they will be right there at the front in the midfield. And by the way, with Sergio Perez, of course, with the disqualification of his teammate and Kevin Magnussen, finishes in 8th. So I think quite a good result, even though in the race he did finish in 10th. I think 8th is a good reward for Sergio Perez after what was not the greatest weekend, but it wasn't too bad. It was okay, I'd say, for Sergio Perez. But for Force India going forward, they should, in Mexico, take one step closer to overtaking McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. Next up is Williams. For Sergei Sorokin and Lance Stroll in the race, excluding the first lap. They did, I think, all they could. The Williams car just wasn't as fast, I think, in terms of race pace as the other cars. But for Lance Stroll, he clearly deserved the penalty he got for crashing into Fernando Alonso. A very poor incident, in my opinion. He went for a gap that was not there at all. I don't know what he was thinking. Just maybe he wasn't thinking at all. Clearly not a gap there, an impossible place to overtake, and he took Fernando Alonso out of the race and deservedly got a penalty. So, yeah, Lance deservedly getting punishment, but for Williams, again, another forgettable race in what is their worst season in their history. Next up is Toro Rosso. Now, for Pierre Gasly, I'm not sure if Gasly was caught up in that first one incident with Stroll and Alonso. I think he was. So that affected Gasly's race. But for Brendan Hartley, what a performance. Even though he gained his 2 points at the end of the day because of disqualifications, finishing P11 from where he started in P20 at the back of the grid, still a great result and a great performance. I actually think, this might be a bit ambitious to say, I think this is Hartley's best performance of his F1 career so far. To go from the back of the grid to originally be just on the outside of the points and then finish in 9th, great performance. And after this performance, I'm actually thinking maybe he will keep his seat at Toro Rosso for 2019. Because Helmut Marko said, when it comes to Brendan Hartley racing for Toro Rosso in the future, when asked what does he need to do, he said, beat Gasly. Simple as that. And in qualifying at Suzuka, he beat Gasly. Didn't beat him in the race, but, you know, he did beat him in qualifying in what was a great result then. And in the race, he finished 9th as Gasly finished in 12th. So I think Hartley is doing, I think, as much as he can to put himself right in the window to get that seat at Toro Rosso for 2019. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, at this point if he did get it, because it seems as though Toro Rosso and Red Bull are running out of people to negotiate with and select for that seat. So maybe Brendan will be at Toro Rosso for 2019. But good result for him, and Honda and Toro Rosso continue to massively improve. Great news for Red Bull. Next up, the home team, Haas F1. What a disaster. This race, coming into the race, in the build-up to the race watch-along, I was saying that this race was the most important in their history so far, and it turned out to probably be their worst race in terms of results since they started in F1. Romain Grosjean retiring on the second lap after contact with Charles Leclerc. Grosjean was clearly at fault and now has a 3-place grid penalty for Mexico, and is now only 2 penalty points away, guys, from a race ban for, well, for whatever race that comes after. He gets those 2 more penalty points. So maybe Brazil if he makes another mistake in Mexico. But yeah, not great from Grosjean. Again, another silly mistake. Something that I thought he had cut out of his career, but clearly he just hasn't. So unfortunate there. Kevin Magnussen, though, even though he was disqualified, and we'll get on to why in a moment, I thought his performance was quite good in the Grand Prix. He got up to 10th after all the start line crashes and just mental stuff that happened at the start, and then jumped Sergio Perez in the first round of pit stops in what was, according to Kevin Magnussen, a great pit stop, as we'll get onto with his quote in just a minute. So good performance, and good performance from the Haas pit crew to get him ahead of Perez, but Magnussen was disqualified from the race because the team went over the 105 kilogram fuel limit for the race. And as we'll get onto in a moment, they weren't too far over. But again, like Ocon and Force India, they broke the rules. So they have to get the punishment. But now we'll just see or hear from Kevin Magnussen about what he thinks about his disqualification and his race as well. Unfortunately, today we were racing in Formula fuel saving than Formula 1. I can understand his frustration. And we used 0.1 kilogram too much for the whole race, so we got disqualified. If that is true, then, well, that is such a fine line between, with the fuel there. That's such a fine line. That's quite incredible if that is true. Those are the rules, so we just have to manage better. The car was great, though, and the pit stop was amazing. On to the next one. So I think K-Mag, at the end there, you can see he's quite pumped up, but I think he's quite disappointed. And Gunther Steiner also was not too glowing of this disqualification. Again, understandably, and I think the Formula 1 fuel regulations should be changed to increase better racing and to make it a bit, again, just a bit better for the teams. But those are the rules, and if you break them, you deserve to get punished. So there you go. But for the last team, we go to Sauber. Now, with Marcus Ericsson, they finished in P10 because of Ocon and Magnussen's disqualification. Ericsson didn't really do anything in the race. He kind of just cruised around. To be honest, he didn't really get involved with anyone else on track. For Charles Leclerc, though, it was so disappointing from his point of view because he was took out by Romain Grosjean at turn 12 and then was running, I think, was it 14th or 15th for the mid part of the race, and then retired with some kind of issue. Maybe it was because of that contact with Romain Grosjean, but so unfortunate for Charles because I think a points finish and a good points finish was on for him at the US Grand Prix. But for Sauber, at least they did score a point, even though it was for unusual and probably lucky reasons. So there you go, that is the midfield. And finally, before we end the review part of this video, let's look at the constructors' standings. So Mercedes clearly lead from Ferrari. They don't win the constructors yet. I think, I don't think they can win it in Mexico. I think they might have to wait until Brazil to win the constructors. Ferrari are second. Red Bull are clearly, of course, in third. And then in fourth is Renault. You can now see 22 points clear of Haas. That is a lot. Haas are going to need, you know, one of those crazy races where some of the top guys crash out and they maximise the result and Renault don't do too well. Maybe if it rains in Brazil, for example. If it rains in Brazil, maybe they can do something, but realistically, it's over for Haas. McLaren are 6th and Force India are in P7, but are closer, despite Ocon being disqualified. They're closer to McLaren in the constructors. And then finally, in 8th, 9th and 10th, Toro Rosso have pulled away slightly from Sauber in 8th. Sauber are 9th, and Williams, of course, in 10th on only 7 points. Sauber, if they just have a clean and solid race, they will, I think, beat Toro Rosso. But they can't have that at the moment because people keep crashing into them or they keep having silly incidents and making silly mistakes. So yeah, that's just the way it's going for them at the minute. So unfortunate there for Sauber. But there you go, those are the constructors standings. For the person asking what do you think about the constructors standings, the only positions I see changing is Force India passing McLaren for P6, and I think Sauber eventually will pass Toro Rosso for P8. But it is going to be very close between Toro Rosso and Sauber. But now, guys, for the next half an hour, you guys can now ask me any question you want, and I'm going to answer in the next half an hour. So it's Q&A time. Fire away with your questions. Let's get into this. Let's see what you guys are going to ask and see what you guys are going to say after that race review. And by the way, guys, hopefully you're enjoying the live race reviews instead of the recorded ones, because next year I'm bringing something to the race reviews, which is going to mean that they can't possibly be recorded because it will take too long to get up onto YouTube. Hopefully you're enjoying it being live. I know most people that normally would watch this can't watch it right now because they're at either work or, you know, doing something. But yeah, great to see you all here. Now we will get into some questions, as I'm sure you guys are typing away. Yeah, Nathan's really enjoying it. Good to hear. Good to see you as well. Right, Andrew Drury. Let's start off with him. Wet forecast for Mexico City next weekend, or this weekend. Or no, next weekend. So it probably won't rain. Lol. Do you mean this weekend, don't you? For this race coming this weekend. Yeah, it was supposed to rain in qualifying, wasn't it, for the US Grand Prix? But it was dry. I wouldn't say clearly, the greatest conditions, but it was definitely dry. Simon Cragland, who is the driver you like the least? For him, it's Sergio Perez. Put in the chat, by the way, Simon, why you think that. For me, it's Lance Stroll. I don't have a personal vendetta against the guy. I don't hate the guy. I think he's he's a good guy. But as a driver, I don't get this whole. I don't get the reasoning for him to still be in the sport. I know he pays a lot of money to teams to drive in terms of sponsorship and his dad and all, but I don't understand how people, after his 2 seasons so far, can possibly look at him and say he has done enough to earn a seat for 2019 and 2020 in any team in F1. I don't understand. I really don't get it. Who's that? Arun, I think that is, says, will Ferrari win the Constructors' Championship? Nope, I don't think they will. I think Mercedes will take that, as well as the Drivers' Championship. Gina, do you think Vettel will learn from his season and come back better in 2019? He thinks no. I also agree. I don't think he will. Because he should have learned from 2017, and he didn't. He should have learned from these mistakes that he was making in 2009 and 2010. But he hasn't, of course. So no, he's not going to learn. He's going to keep making these mistakes. Maybe not as much next year. Because, once we get to Australia, it's a fresh start. And he can forget about 2018 and all the pressure that came with this season. With how fast the Ferrari car has been. And the great chances he's had to win the championship. So he won't make, at the start of next season, as many mistakes, I think. But he will still make these basic errors that will cost him titles. And unless the Ferrari car is clearly all season, for next season, the faster car, I don't see how Vettel wins the title. Vettel needs a dominant car to win the championship. And I think that whole notion or that criticism of Vettel back when he was at Red Bull is coming true. He does need a car that needs to be clearly faster than the Mercedes all season long for him to beat Hamilton, because in somewhat equal machinery, or even a car where Vettel is 1/4 of a second faster, he can't beat Hamilton. He just can't do it. Andrew Drury, last year all the Renault engines exploded apart from Max's in Mexico because they weren't getting enough air. True, that might be another factor in Mexico, but as long as they don't have issues in terms of just sheer power, they should be closer again because the air is thinner. Sebastian, who will be Ferrari's next driver after Vettel leaves? I think Max. Oh, that's a good question. It depends on 2 things. 1, when Vettel goes, and 2, how Red Bull and Honda develop over 2019 and 2020. If Red Bull are no closer to winning championships by the end of 2020, then Max will be leaving for Ferrari and replacing Vettel only if Vettel continues to bottle it and fail in 2019 and 2020. So, yeah. If those things happen, then Max will be at Ferrari, in my opinion. No, Vettel has been making these mistakes the last 7 years. It has been Vettel's next worst season, if not his worst ever. That's from Simon Cragland. we'll get on to how his season compares to his others at the end of the season when I do my end of season reviews for all the teams and drivers. But yeah, you'd have to say this season has to go down as one of his worst in his career. I wouldn't say as bad as 2014. I think 2014 was probably his worst season. And then this season would probably be number 2 to that. 2016, that was also not a good season. He fell away quite bad at the end of that year. So, yeah, definitely not a good season for Sebastian. You cannot paint it as a good season at all. Bless Jube, I think Vettel will be better. The fact that he can recover in a race means he can improve from there. True, but you can't keep doing this and expect to just come back through and get, get points. Because, all drivers make mistakes. And yes, if Lewis, for example, in Mexico makes a mistake, spins around and then comes back to 5th, he's not going to go and do that for another maybe 10 or 15 races, knowing the way he is. But if you keep making these mistakes and falling to the back of the grid, in the first few laps, you're not going to win a championship because it's going to catch up eventually, and the person you're going up against is going to gain enough points whilst you're messing up so much. This is from Niblo, if Ricardo's engine blows up again in Mexico, I will blow up. Nathan, how do you think Leclerc will cope with the pressure of Ferrari? I think he will be in his element because he is so mentally strong. I think he will cope with it, but you never know what people are going to be like under pressure. I think that's the real test of any person in life, to be honest. If you can perform under pressure, I think that shows how great of a person you are at what you do. If you can't perform under pressure, then that definitely worsens your stock, depending on what job you're doing in life. So yeah, if he does cope with that pressure, I think he will be right there for the championship, but only if Ferrari do have, of course, a fast enough car. Is Force India the fastest car in the midfield? That's an Inaz. Overall, yes, I think they do. I know in yesterday's race they did not finish best of the rest and Renault were very fast, but overall, aero and power unit, Force India have the best car in the midfield, and Ocon proved that in qualifying. Andrew Drury, I think Leclerc has a real chance of the title next year. I think he does. He needs to, though, start the season off well. If he doesn't start the season well, I don't think he will win the title or really go for it right at the end of the season. He needs to start off fast, something he didn't do this season, so he needs to correct that for 2019. Daniel Gout, I think Sky Italia said Vettel had a loss in his family, maybe mom or dad a few weeks back. If he has something in his family, that might be a factor, but again, we don't know. So I'm not going to speculate on something as sensitive as that. Sebastian, Leclerc will easily cope with the pressure. His father passed away and he still won the Baku race. That's a good point as well, is look at the pain he has had to go through with people close to him and family members. Jules Bianchi, for example, as well, dying after that crash at Suzuka in 2014. Leclerc, didn't give up on his dream and continued to push, and has now got where I think he wanted to. What do you make of the Haas's drivers? Who's the best? That's on Simon Cragland. I still think if both drivers don't make mistakes and are at their absolute best, Romain Grosjean is the better driver, in my opinion. He is faster, and again, when he's not making silly mistakes, I think Romain is better. But I think Magnussen is more consistent. Even though Magnussen can be quite a bit of an idiot sometimes, I think he's a bit more consistent. Andrew Drury, Leclerc explained in an interview why he was poor at the start of the season. Apparently he was struggling with all the different settings on an F1 car. Well, that'd be a plausible explanation, because you guys, I'm sure, have seen a Formula 1 steering wheel. It looks like something that NASA have made. It's absolutely incredible, the amount of buttons and dials that are on the steering wheels compared to what it was like even, say, like 2002, 2003, 15 years ago. The buttons on the steering wheel are incredible, and the dials and just everything that is on that steering wheel is so developed. Blessed you, how did Hamilton lose his first place to Kimi? I think if he had not cut across on the way to turn 1, he would have won. He lost the race because of bad tyre wear, and because in hindsight maybe Mercedes should not have pitted under the virtual safety car and just followed what Kimi Raikkonen did. So yeah, if bad tyre wear, that's why he lost. His first. I think you're asking how he lost his first place to Kimi at turn 1. Well, in terms of the race, he lost the win because of bad tyre wear, but losing first place in the first corner, Kimi just got a better start. Lewis tried to come across, but Kimi was too far alongside. And I think Kimi was also always going to get into turn 1 first. He just had much better drive on the stickier tyres. Predictions for Mexico. Right now, I would say Verstappen to win. And then probably Hamilton second. And then a Ferrari in third. I don't know which one, though, yet. Right, just looking at some more questions. By the way, thank you guys for the questions. They are really good tonight. Gina, why were Ferrari so quick? Better engine again? It's not because of the engine. It's because the new upgrades they brought for Singapore that they used for Singapore, Sochi and Suzuka made the car worse. So they took them off on Saturday morning off the Ferrari car, and suddenly the car was right back where it should be. So clearly Ferrari put developments on the car that made it worse and has made their chances of a title for Vettel, even though I don't think they were that great anyway, even if they didn't put those upgrades on the car at Singapore, they made those chances worse. Niblo, Ferrari took off 4 months worth of upgrades to regain their pace. Yep, they did. I think that's a bit poor on Ferrari's side of things, that they have to take off so many upgrades they think. And that's what an upgrade is supposed to be. The clue's in the name. It's supposed to make your car better. To take off that amount of upgrades and be that much faster, that's quite embarrassing. That is quite embarrassing. So yeah, I think Ferrari need to also have a look at their wind tunnel and their R&D, because clearly something went wrong there. Did you see that Max burst his shoe? That's from Nathan. Says, haha, legend. Yep, I did see that. Max was basically pushing so hard that he ripped his shoe apart. So that just shows you how much velocity was going through his legs. Daniel Gell, think Hamilton lost because they let Raikkonen go and ignored his pace. I think Mercedes probably thought they were covered against Raikkonen, but then again the tyres just fell away completely on Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes, and that's why he lost the race. As Nibbler's saying in the chat, and I might as well just plug it now. By the way, guys, if you have not subscribed already, don't forget to. It's on the bottom right of the screen, or click on my channel name to click on the link, or click on the channel name and then go to my channel page and click subscribe to the channel. We do this every race weekend for the races, and we'll do this next week for Mexico as well. We've got, I would say, about 10 minutes left, guys, so keep asking some questions and I will keep on answering again for the next 10 minutes. It's been a great Q&A so far, so again, thank you guys a lot. I'll just look to make sure I haven't missed any. Simon Cragland, do you think Ricciardo would beat Vettel in the same car again? Yes, I think he would. I think confirmation of who is better would have happened in 2015 if Vettel stayed at Red Bull. But of course he didn't. So, yeah. But I think Ricciardo would have, or would beat Vettel in the same car. And I think Ricciardo would be up there for the championship. Maybe not winning it, but he'd definitely be up there competing with Hamilton. He is such a good driver, but just doesn't have the right machinery to go and win enough races to go for a title. Right, I'm just looking through now to see if I missed any questions. I want to make sure I include as many from you guys as possible. Spider Monkey, am I late, Chaz? Well, the stream started about an hour ago, but we're going through a Q&A now, so don't worry, not too late. So if you've got any questions, then go ahead and ask them. Sebastian, who will win more titles, Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc? I believe Max Verstappen. Charles is a very, very good driver, but I think Max has slightly more talent. I think Leclerc has a better chance of winning titles earlier in his career compared to Max, but I think, say if we get Max and Leclerc at Ferrari for 2022 or 2023, I think Max would beat Charles in the same car. But what a battle that would be. Verstappen and Leclerc in the same car. And by the way, I know you guys might be thinking, oh, well, they're not going to do that because Ferrari like to have number 2 drivers, but you can't really say that now because Leclerc's going to Ferrari for 2019 alongside Vettel, and I don't think Leclerc is going to be the number 2. So they're not opposed to the idea, and they have had equal drivers before. For example, Massa and Raikkonen, they were equal, and I think it worked out. I thought it worked out fine, Raikkonen and Massa. Nathan, what is your favourite F1 engine era? Got to be V10 for me. Yeah, I'd probably say V10, but I want to give a shout out to the 80s and the turbo era then. That's the engines in that period were just so incredible, and they made the cars, one, so spectacular to watch going around the corners because of the amount of torque that was going through those engines, but also those cars were incredibly scary to drive. Incredibly scary. I'm surprised we didn't get. I don't think at any race in the turbo era. Maybe we got 1 or 2, but I'm surprised we didn't get any more fatalities or really bad injuries, to be honest, during that era, because those cars were so scary to drive. So much power going through that engine. Bless Jube, I'm told the Mercedes car isn't good at following during the race. Is this true, and is this a design flaw? This is true, and this is a design flaw, but it's not necessarily the worst design flaw in the world, because the Mercedes car is designed to be out front. It's not designed to be passing people. And I think the reason that's the case is because they dominated 2014, 2015, and 2016, so they're not used to passing people. They're used to being in a 1-2 position and only having to pass themselves. So yeah, it is true. It is absolutely true. V8s for me with the sound of the blown diffuser. That's from Niblo. Yeah, the blown diffuser, such a great sound. If you want to hear the best blown diffuser sound, go and put on, or go search on YouTube after the stream ends, Renault 2011 blown diffuser. Go listen to that. Wow, what sound that was. I love that sound of that Renault. Sebastian, Ferrari will want Max. I think they do have some kind of small agreement in place, because I think Max has already had talks with Ferrari. I think it was last year in the mid-season. So I think there might be a small agreement there in case things don't go right at Red Bull. Yeah, the V8s were sick, especially with the curves. That's from Nathan. Yep, they were. Spider Monkey, Ocon and Verstappen, or Leclerc or Ocon. Are you talking about in terms of driver lineups? I'm not sure. Maybe try and clarify that if you can. Spider Monkey, as you play the F1 2018 game, which power unit sound do you like? The one that sounds the best is the Ferrari. If you listen to it on the game, it has this very nice sound when you lift off the power on the game. Very nice sound. You kind of have to listen to it to understand what I mean. What are your thoughts on Honda's prospects for next year? I think if they continue to improve, that they will be, by this time next year, winning races, not consistently, but they will be consistently going for at least podiums, and at certain tracks, definitely race wins. I think they're going to be that competitive this time next year, but only if Honda continue to improve and don't go backwards, you know, at the start of 2019. John, Red Bull will pull out if Honda doesn't produce a good, reliable engine. 2 year for Max. I don't think Red Bull will pull out. I think they'll find a way to stay and then maybe hook up with someone new after that if it doesn't work. But for Max Verstappen, yeah, I think his contract does end at the end of 2020. So if Red Bull don't get their act together with Honda, I think Max will go. If Red Bull and Honda is slow in 2019, will Max leave in 2020? That's from Gina. It depends. If 2019 is not that great, but then in 2020 they're really good, then that might convince Max to stay for 2021 and 2022. So it's not all down to 2019. If in 2019 they're not as good as they think they're going to be, but then in 2020 they get back to where they think they should be, then, you know, that should convince Max to stay. But we'll see what happens, of course. Right, just looking for some remaining questions. Daniel Gow, all depends on how the drivability Honda, Red Bull, plus new regulations for the wings will be. I think Red Bull, if they don't suffer correlation issues like they did for the last regulation change for the aerodynamics, if they don't suffer that issue again, they should get the aero right as they normally do. And if Honda continue to improve and the installation process with the Honda power unit going into the Red Bull car goes all well, it should be a good start to the season in 2019. And then again, by this time next season, we should be seeing Red Bull on the podium quite a lot, I think. Right, I'm going to answer a couple more questions, guys, for another couple minutes, and then I will end this race review. So if you've got any remaining questions, put them in the chat right now, and I will answer them. By the way, if you're watching this back, if you do have any questions, then don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and I'll try my best to answer them as quickly as possible. Daniel Gow says, hope so. I hope so too. I hope Honda continue to improve, because it'd be best for the sport if Honda continue to get better and get closer to Mercedes and Ferrari. Spider Monkey, do you think Renault will become one of the best teams out there in the future? If they do, it won't be until probably nearer the mid-2020s, so in like 6 or 7 years' time. I don't see it happening in the next 3 or 4 years, but maybe after that, it's possible, but they have to continue developing and getting better. Nathan, are you able to get a live timing screen? I think F1 Word uses Planet F1. I tried actually to use Planet F1, and I tried to contact the person running that site, but wasn't able to pull off anything. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I tried, but again, I couldn't get anywhere with it. John, if Honda is no good, Mercedes, Ferrari will never supply Red Bull. Agreed. Absolutely. They are stuck with Honda or pull out. Yes, but it depends. It depends what the Honda is doing. If the Honda is still good enough for Red Bull to have race wins but not be good enough for, you know, for championships, then they can keep Honda for, say, 2022, 2023, and then wait for a new engine manufacturer to come back into the sport if they wanted to. Okay, thanks for your answers. Great stream as usual. Thank you very much, Nathan, and thanks for coming along. Just looking. Daniel Gout, pace of development at Renault. They will be in the mix before 2100 for sure. Would Ferrari... Sorry. Would Ferrari want to go for Mick Schumacher? Though, if he performs... Let me just clear my throat. Sorry. So, would Mick Schumacher... would Ferrari want to go for Mick Schumacher, though, if he performs instead of Max? We'll have to see what Mick does if he does get into F1. If Mick is in F1 in 2020, he does have a chance of a Ferrari seat, only if he does really well in the Sauber, which we don't know if he's actually going to do. But if he's not in F1 by 2020, and Max leaves Red Bull in 2020, I don't see how Mick will get into Ferrari. I don't see it. Rumour, Honda's bringing another step equal to 6/10 beginning 2019. That's from Daniel Gout. Hopefully they do. Hopefully they do. Because if they do, you never know. Red Bull could be winning the first couple of races in 2019. Who knows? Hopefully the start of next season is exciting. Your throat is still sore for the last 2 months. Lol. Yep, it is. It is. But, you know, I'm going to go through it. Push through it as I usually do for you guys, because I know you enjoy the streams so much. Right, let me just look for a final couple of questions. When Hamilton leaves, will Max be the best qualifier? That's from Gina. Yes, he will be. Max is currently the second best, so yeah. When Lewis goes, it will be Max that will be the best qualifier on the grid. Right, let me just look. I think I have missed a couple. Right, let me just look. If you've got any remaining questions, guys, put them in the chat right now, and I will read it out. I'm about to end this stream. Gina, if Red Bull and Honda is slow in 2019... Oh, I already read that one out. Okay. Spider Monkey really feels for Daniel Ricciardo. I think we all do. We all do. John, Ferrari will win the first few races next year and then nosedive. I actually think the opposite. I think Ferrari, if you were to ask me right now, I think Ferrari will start the season off a bit slower than they want to, and then will get better pace-wise through the season. But for the drivers, it's up to them to get better and better results through the season. But I think Ferrari will definitely... I don't think they will be at their best during 2019 in the first few races. The best they will probably be from, say, Monaco until their home race in Monza. That's when the best stretch for Ferrari will be, and it normally is. So, yeah. I think Ferrari... They won't be miles off if they're not the fastest at the start of next season, but I think in the summer, the European season, that's where Ferrari will be at their best. Right, I'll just answer these couple ones. Daniel Gout, do you believe Max has lived up to the hype since he joined as a 17-year-old? So far, yes, in my opinion, because you got to remember, you know. People are hyping him up because they think he's going to be as good as, say, Lewis Hamilton or Ayrton Senna or Michael Schumacher or Fangio. Lewis Hamilton was not in F1 at 21 years old. Hamilton entered F1 at 22. By the time Max gets to 22, he's going to have, what, 6 race wins in his career? Lewis didn't have any by the age of 22, so when he entered F1, so... Yeah, and you know, Senna wasn't in F1 until he was, what, 24? Schumacher wasn't in F1 until he was about 23, 24. So yeah, I think Max will live up to the hype. I think he will. Just needs to get in the right car. Blessed you. How do we know Max is second best qualified when we don't have stats that put him ahead of Vettel? The Ferrari is a lot faster when it comes to qualifying because of just the engine power. That's why. And Ferrari's party mode is way more powerful than the Renault one. So that's why. goodbye to John, who's just leaving now. Right, last one from Peter Weir. Do you think Raikkonen can win another race, or was this his last? In my opinion, this was his last win, so save this moment because it's going to be a famous one when we look back in a few years' time. But guys, that is it for the 2018 United States Grand Prix race review. But what's coming up next on the channel? Well, let me give you a sneak peek. So tomorrow will be the podcast. Me and Niblo are going to record that tonight, and then we'll get that up for you between 4 and 5 p.m. tomorrow on Tuesday. And then on Thursday will be the preview for the Mexican Grand Prix, again between 4 and 5 p.m. UK time on Thursday. Now, guys, I just want to let you know there is going to be a small change to my race weekend format from now on for next weekend. I'm making another small change, but it is a very small one. You guys will know on a race day, I do the race watch along, and then I come off for 45 minutes and do a race reaction for an hour instead. Because, let's be honest, the race review and the race reaction can be mistaken for the same thing. What I'm going to do instead, and I know you guys, when the race watch along comes to its end, you want me to continue. What I'm going to do is, as soon as the race ends, we're then going to instantly go into the race reaction. So as soon as the race ends, I'm then going to pull up pictures and go through the race for another hour, and it will be a part of the race watch along. So the race watch alongs will now be 3 hours and 45 minutes instead of 2 hours and 45 minutes. So for example, at Mexico, I think the race starts at 7:10 in the UK. So I will be live from 6:10 p.m. until about 9:45 p.m. in the UK, with the build up to the race in the race watch along, then the race watch along, and then a race reaction, but it'll be a part of the watch along. Just to let you guys know that coming up for Mexico, and well, from now on in. But guys, thank you so much for this weekend. I believe we are very close, if not at 1,500 subs. The growth has been so fantastic. We've gained 500 basically subs this month, and we're coming to the end of October. What a month we have had, and I thank you guys again so much for what has been a great month for this channel in terms of views and subs and just everything. Again, thank you guys a lot. But if you are new to the channel, we do this every race weekend, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. At the bottom right of the screen, click subscribe there, or click on my channel name and go to my channel page and subscribe and hit the notifications bell. Like this video, comment down below what you thought of the 2018 United States Grand Prix and what happened in the race. And yeah, just comment about what you thought of the teams. And if you have any remaining questions that you want me to answer, put them in the comments. Also, don't forget to join our Discord server. We're almost up to 80 people now in that server, so it'd be great for you guys to join that community over there, get more involved in the community. And by the way, the best way for notifications for my videos is Discord. So if you are already in the server or you're not in the server, look out for my Discord and also join the server if you're new, because that's the best way for notifications to my videos. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter. That's another great way to keep up to date with me and when I'm going to be uploading, and if there's any issues as to when I'm not uploading, then I will update you on my Twitter. And also, don't forget to check out chazahd.com for more content from me here on this channel. But guys, thank you very much for this race weekend, and until tomorrow's podcast and until the next live stream, which will be the practice review for Mexico on Friday evening, I will see you all then.